All right, let's do that. There we go. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me today to be able to speak with you guys. I enjoy trying to extend the olive branch a little bit from the assessing side and build that relationship between our two departments. I think that's always important. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll give Vicki a chance to introduce herself and say a few words. But I've been an assessor for about 13 years now, as a real estate appraiser before that, and started out in the city of Worcester as a data collector, and went to be a principal assessor in the town of Sturbridge, then the chief assessor in the city of Leominster, and now am the chief assessor here in the town of North Andover. So gotten around a little bit, and in that experience and in that time frame, I've also been head of our education committee for the Massachusetts Association of Assessing Officers, and also was on their executive board, the professional admissions committee, let me just make sure that, there we go, let's lower that, right? I've been on their professional admissions committee, was their president, immediate past president, and now am a certified instructor with the International Association of Assessing Officers. So I've done quite a bit in my career to try and further my knowledge of assessing, so I can do things like this with you guys and talk a little bit about what we do in the assessing office and what you guys do and how we can build that relationship a little bit better. So Vicki, you want to say a couple words?
Sure. Vicki Smith, been working for the town of Sterling for 4 years now, but I've been in municipality work for over 31 years. Have had both types of relationships with my assessors in my many jobs, and definitely right now have a great relationship with the assessor's office. So that's always a good thing. So that's all I'd like to say.
Excellent. So I think it's important, and we always, I always make this like a contest, right? It's like who is more important, right? The treasurer and collector's office or the assessor's office, right? How many people think it's the treasurer collector's office? Everybody raise their hands, right? Speaking to a bunch of treasurer collectors, that doesn't surprise me, right? Actually, isn't it funny? We always say, oh yeah, but you couldn't do your job if we didn't do ours. Well, you couldn't do yours if we didn't do ours. So instead of, pointing fingers at each other and trying to figure out who's more important, if we just joined forces, I think people would realize we are the biggest revenue source in city and municipal government, especially because of the property taxes. With the valuation of that and the collection of that, we definitely bring in the most money into any municipality. So together we are a force to be reckoned with, right? So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about each. I'm admitting people as we go, so I apologize if I'm stuttering around a little bit here, but I keep getting all these people wanting to join. So now that I can like deny them, right? If I want to. All right, so let's go to the second slide here. Let me put it on full screen here, and let's see here. Does everybody see that in full screen? Yeah. Okay. So I got here a little bit about the assessor's responsibilities, duties, and responsibilities versus the collectors. And one of the important things to know is if you want to build that relationship between you and the assessor's office and vice versa, I think it's really important to understand what that office does, so you can maybe appreciate that, but also understand, we all have jobs to do, and how technical it can be or how time consuming it can be. Really helps you to understand that office and maybe build that relationship better. So one of the things I want to talk about is just a quick overview. When we talk about the assessor's office, I think the biggest job we have each year is assessments, right? And that's valuing every parcel in town each and every year. So it's something we're doing all year long, throughout the year, and it becomes one of the biggest jobs we have. You know, updating assessed owners, whether it be from the Registry of Deeds, having some involvement in setting the tax rate with the select board and the management. Also betterments, we can talk about that in a little bit. Liens, abatements, exemptions, coming up with due dates, you know, adhering to those, the commitments for any of the tax collection, the affidavit of mailing, very important to us. You guys do that, and you know, I'll talk a little bit about why that's important and why we need it. Supplemental billing, and then of course our favorite, motor vehicle excise. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about those. And then on the collector side, you know, the billing and collection of all of those taxes and commitments that I just mentioned. I'm sure that's a big feat, and definitely a lot of number crunching, which is what you guys love to do, right? That's why you're all doing this in this profession. Maintaining the records of commitments and collections. How many people, well, let me ask Vicky. Vicky, do you maintain the copy of the commitment, or
Yes.
does the assessor's office do it?
We keep a copy.
You keep a copy, all right. Do you know if the assessor's office keeps a copy?
I do know that they keep a copy also.
Okay, all right, just curious. It should definitely be a copy kept in one of our offices. It is a record in common by the Secretary of State's website. So one of the things we want to be familiar with is that record retention manual, and being, you know, working together, because really there's no need for both of us to keep a copy as long as one of us has it. And we do that. That's we want to make sure that happens. I can tell you here in North Andover, that hasn't happened. You know, I thought the treasurer was doing it. Treasurer thought we were doing it, and there isn't a copy. So good for us, right? So we've rectified it, and we definitely have a copy, and we're going back to get those copies. Luckily, we have them in electronic format, so we can get those. But enforcing the law in regard to delinquent tax accounts, you guys have an uphill battle to deal with that. Let me just let somebody in here. And then also preparation of the lien certificates, right? You guys are doing that all the time, probably daily, and quite a few of them. We'll get into talking about that a little bit. And then the responsibility of sending a tax bill to each person that's assessed, and issuing refunds due to overpayments or abatements. So a lot of responsibilities each office has, you know, and what we do in each one. We're going to talk about these as we go through this class today. And if you have any questions, if you just bring your mouse up by the top of your screen or by the bottom, you'll see some a way to raise your hand, you know, or something like that, or just get my attention, unmute yourself and yell out to me, and we'll make sure we answer your questions. Or you can try and put a question in the chat box. I'm happy to try and keep an eye on that and take a look at that too. So let's look at the next slide here. So getting prepared to tax, right? We talked about the biggest job is our real estate and personal property tax we send out each year, which we just got through doing, right? And we're in abatement season now. But valuing that property every January 1st. Does everybody understand the timing of the assessments versus the collection?
Yes.
All right. So just in case, let's take this fiscal year we're into, right? What fiscal year are we in, Vicky?
We're in 2022.
2022, which starts on July 1,
2021.
goes to June 30th, 2022.
That's
And so
always a
the
tough
date
one.
of assessment for that fiscal year is
July 1 of 2021.
No. So the date of assessment is
Oh.
January 1 of 2021, right? I swear we should have one of those spinny wheels where you go to the date and it tells you what we're doing, right? So it's important to know that because we always explain that, right? It's like, okay, you just got your tax bill. We just sent those out. Everybody receives them on January 1st, 2022. The date of assessment was January 1st, 2021. And I always tell people that that's no different than an appraiser coming into your house that day and appraising your property as at that day. What do you think the appraiser is going to use to value your home if he enters your house on January 1st, 2021?
Tell me.
Do we know? Like, if anybody had appraisals done in the past? Talk to the appraiser or anything? So what they're going to do is they're going to try and pick out properties that are similar to yours that have sold, right, prior to that date. So they'll use they'll use all of 2020 sales to value your home as of January 1st, 2021. Same thing we do. All right. So that's the reason why we're out there inspecting properties all the time, is because we have to have our data correct in order to be able to value those. So we do that. We got a question here in the chat box. Let me just come off of this real quick. So she says, so if we have the motor vehicle commitment in the treasurer collector's office, we do not need to provide a copy for the assessor's office. You don't need to provide a copy. No. If they would like a copy of their own, sure, go ahead, I guess, give it to them. But we only need, according to the Secretary of State, one copy. So as long as somebody has it, you're good. Okay, but if the assessor wants to keep their own and you guys want to keep your own because it's easier, accessible, why not? If that's what makes them happy, make the assessor happy, right? Or, I do things to make my treasurer collector happy, so we'll get to some of these other questions in a second here. Well, let's get back to just getting prepared to tax, right? So inspections we do, we talk about sales analysis questionnaires that we send out. There are other inspections as far as building permits go. We're looking at market trends and the overall market data. We're doing this every single day. All right. And then when we're talking about homes that sell, we definitely look at the registry of deeds, right? A lot of us assessors offices have a registry of deeds file transfer that comes over to us. So we can enter that ownership information either daily, weekly, or monthly. So we're doing that constantly. Do any of you have Munis as a billing software system? Maybe a few. So one of the questions always comes up is if you have a change of address, do you change it in your billing software side? Do you send it over to the assessor so they can change it? So
Yes,
Vicky's saying yes. So Vicky, if there was a taxpayer that came into your office and asked, I need to change my address, what's the process in your office? What do you tell them?
We will change it, in our system, but then we do tell them to go down to the assessor's office because it needs to be changed in the tax file. So come next fiscal year, the updated address stays to what they want it to be.
Yeah, so it's really important. Depends on everybody's, how they want to handle that. I can give you a couple suggestions with change of address. I always try to get them to sign a formal paper, to say, here, I want to change my address. That way they're signing to it, because we have so many other things out there, whether it be a divorce, some other legal issues that might be going on. Want to get that paper from them with a signature on it to say they requested this and they're the owner of the property, or we confirm that they're one of the owners, and then we'll go ahead and change that in our CAMA system, whether it be Patriot Properties, Vision, The state camera system is kind of defunct now. Tyler, you have a lot of different camera systems out there, but we'll go ahead and change that in our database. That way, when we do transfer that file for the next billing cycle, it does come over correctly. Now, one of the funny things about Munis is if you change the address over in Munis, it's changing a client ID in Munis. And what a lot of people don't realize is when you change that, it changes any bill that client ID is associated with. So if this woman has been paying taxes on her real estate for 20 years and then decided to move to Florida but keep the house, you change that address, it not only changes it for this year, it changes every bill previous to that in Munis. I don't know why it's like that, but I always tell my treasurer collector, please do not change the address in Munis. Let me do it. We always tell people we will update it in the system. It will be correct on the next billing cycle. So rest assured we will get that. Couple questions. Just a question about returned bills from the post office. I knew we were going to get to this today. I knew you guys couldn't help yourself in asking me about this, because the last time I taught this class, this was a big topic of discussion, right? Is this a collector or assessor duty or both? I will tell you that it is both. Absolutely. I don't expect the amount that we get back with those little stupid yellow stickers on them. We definitely have to should split the load, should really work together to try and figure these addresses out and really look at those yellow labels too. What are those saying? I can tell you that there's a ton of reasons why, right? Or, doesn't have a receptacle at the thing. We still have the address right, but why is it not getting delivered? Is it a new postal carrier? Did they just not make a great effort at delivering that? Half of them, I can tell you that when I was in the city of Leominster, we'd rip the yellow label off, put a new white label on there with the same exact address, and the second time it got delivered. So it's just ridiculous to me what's going on out there. But yes, I think it's both. We work together. I hope that your assessor works with you to try to help you out with that. A lot of times, depending upon the address it was sent from, it will get returned to your office, right? Depending on what the return address is, I may return it to the treasurer collector's office and kind of split the load and figure that out. But certainly both of us want to work at getting that done. Another question is the affidavit of mailing the assessor's responsibility? No, it is not the assessor's responsibility. But it is very important that we do get a copy from you each year. The reason for that is because of any appellate tax board cases. We have to submit that as some of our paperwork at the arbitration hearing to prove that the mailing was done from the treasurer collector's office. So great question. Let's move on. Any questions about the updating of addresses, change of address? One last thing is I think that our camera systems now, in case people don't know, that there's an added field now in our camera systems that we put in what's called the Mass GIS coordinate system, and that is linked to E911 now. So whenever we update our maps or parcel information, a new GIS coordinate is assigned to that parcel. It puts a little dot right in the center of that parcel or in the center of that structure. So now when 911 gets called, they're getting sent to an actual GIS coordinate rather than an address. Because in the old days, it used to be being sent out to 100 Main Street. Well, if Main Street goes from 1 to 500, 1 to 200, they just send them to the middle of Main Street, thinking that that's where 100 should be. So now they have a much more robust system and certainly try to get them directly to it. Helps saves lives and gets the response quicker. So that's been an update in the last, I think since 2012 that was implemented. Let's talk a little bit about the tax rate. Vicki, you must be a little bit familiar with Gateway.
Yes.
Okay, yes. And I'm assuming that some of our other participants in class today have or have entered some things on Gateway, or at least have looked at it, or had some knowledge of it. There's quite a few forms that we fill out to the Department of Revenue, Department of Local Services, Bureau of Local Assessments. So, because we are overseen by them, right? We're regulated by them, and it's their job to make sure we're doing our job. So a lot of these forms we do submit. Let's go over a few of them. Anytime you see LA, that's usually the Board of Assessors, because it's a local assessment form. That's what that LA means. So LA3, for instance, is we upload all of the sales we used to value our town that year. That's what the LA3 is. This is just a listing of all our sales, whether they're arm's length transactions, not, which means that they're legitimate sales. They're not bank foreclosures or short sales or anything like that. So we submit that. Once that's approved, then we can submit our valuations, and that's our local assessment form, or LA4. And that basically is just a listing of how many properties are in each class, and then the total valuation for that class. So classifications, for instance, a single family home is classed as a 101. Condos are 102, trailers are 103, mobile homes, two families are 104, and so forth and so on. So a lot of classification codes we use, and then it gets reported on that. LA13, this is the, if you ask any of your town managers, finance directors, people projecting the budget, this is the one they want to know the most all the time, is that growth number, right? So the LA13 is that certification of growth report. And then the LA15 is one that we submit only on the non-revaluation years. It's called the interim year. And that's just the percentage of changes that you see in the assessments. We have 5 years between recertification years now. So every 5th year we are doing that. Major revaluation, or really going through a large audit, which is a big deal for our office. And certainly, I'm sure it can be for you as well. I'm sure you guys feel the pressure on that. Some of the tax rate reports that the assessors may be involved in, depending upon your town. Every town is different. Every town operates a little bit differently, but certainly the accountant does the Schedule A's, the overlay and liability report. That's something that we'll get involved in along with the accountant or treasurer collector. And that's basically to, tell the Department of Local Services the liability we have right now in overlay, why we have to keep so much money in there, what we have for pending cases in collections. And then, of course, the levy limit report and LA5 options and certification report. If you're not familiar with that, that is the one that we have signed annually at the classification hearing with the select board. And then, of course, the last and larger one that we all see is the tax rate recap, which is 4 pages long, kind of takes all of the data, puts it all into a 4-page summary, and submits that for our tax rate approval. So let's talk a minute about the accountant and tax rate reports. Again, Schedule A's is something that you're doing the B1 and B2, the free cash and other funds. Those are all of the transfers that happen during the year between accounts and what's voted at certain meetings throughout the year. The overlay, again, you may be involved with that simply because we not only put the liabilities on the overlay account, but what else is a liability? That's uncollected taxes, right? So if you have uncollected taxes on your books that you track every year, that should be on that OL1 as well. Letter in lieu of balance, I think that they've now gotten rid of that on Gateway. I have to check on that, but I think that's new this year or just last year. I think they may have gotten rid of that. And then, of course, tax rate recap, page 3 is definitely one that you guys would be involved in. Page 2 kind of summarizes everything, but page 3 is those estimated receipts, right? That's how much are we going to collect this year. You know, you try to be within last year's reason, but of course, underestimating those receipts can raise the amount of property taxes we're going to raise, right? So if you don't understand that, that's something that's very important in municipal finance, is we want to get, well, a lot of us want to get as close to that 2.5% increase as we can, because we don't want to leave too much on the table, right? When we're collecting taxes, it adds to our excess levy capacity, which is good for our bond rating. It can add to our free cash at the end of the year, which we can use for capital improvements. So every municipality is different. Every mindset as far as municipal finance is different. So however your management or finance director and town administrator decide to attack that, you can be subject to that, whether you're underestimating the receipts or trying to get as close as possible to them, depending on your capacity. So we do that. And then also your debt exclusion form, right? Do you have any debt exclusions, Vicky, or?
We used to, we don't
You used
anymore. Yep.
Okay. All right. Yeah, there's some have it, you know, difference between debt exclusion and an override, of course, is the debt exclusion goes on the books for them for the time of the borrowing and then comes back off it at the end of it. And then tax title report, that's always a good one. That's always fun. And then again, the town clerk, they could also be involved in the Schedule A's, definitely involved with the LA 5 options and certifications. And then the tax rate recap, page 4 is the one where it summarizes all of the votes throughout the year, all the money that was moved from raise and appropriate or from different accounts, from free cash. And so that's all recorded and voted, and the town clerk keeps track of those. And sometimes the town clerk is very good at being able to do the page 4, but a lot of times it could be your town accountant, your assessor, or your finance director that does that for the town clerk, and then they sign off on it. So that's just the reality of it. Any questions on that so far? Okay. So let's talk about betterments and liens for a second. Does anybody, well, let me ask you this. Do any of the offices, do you guys handle the betterments and payoffs, or does the assessor's office?
We don't have any in our town, so I can't help with that question.
Yeah, I figured. Some do. We don't have any either anymore. I can tell you when I was in Sturbridge that we certainly had a lot of betterments. So Lynn says she handles the payoffs in Winchton. Okay, good. It was a collaborative effort in Sturbridge where the treasurer collector's office would take the payoff figure, confirm it, but we would do a little spreadsheet and be able to calculate that payoff figure, and then we'd submit that form to both the taxpayer and the treasurer collector, so that way when the person came in to pay it off, they had a per diem amount depending on the payoff, and then they would report that back to us once it was handled. Treasurers handle release and get commitment from assessors. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So it really depends. Like that's the best answer, right? Today is it depends.
And that's what it's
You know?
looking like, you know, that it's assessors, and then some people say it's the treasurer. So it is.
Right. Yeah, it certainly does depend. And one of the important things, since I've been doing this for 13 years, is when we first get into this, it was all about who's right and who's wrong. And, you know, it's, oh my God, there's so much regulation in our office and in our jobs. You know, I think people get hung up on that a lot of times, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're wrong or that someone's right. You know, it's what's going to work for the town, right? What's going to work for you? What's going to work for your office? And there's no big, you know, bad wolf up at the Department of Local Services or DOR that's going to slam that hammer down on you and tell you, oh no, you can't do that. I mean, there's some instances, don't get me wrong, we all have regulations to abide by. But when it comes to betterments or some of the inter-office procedures, we're in control of that. We'll decide if it works out for you guys, that's the way it works out, then sure. Grafton says that treasurer collectors handles the release and receive commitment from assessors as well. So if that's what works, that's great. And so a lot of the payoffs are done by the assessors. And what's funny about this is if you read the actual legislation when it comes to betterments and liens, you will notice that it says the assessing board. It doesn't say the board of assessors is the authority in maintaining these betterments. It's actually the assessing board. And what I mean by that is that when a betterment is set up, then the town also appoints an assessing board for the betterments. And a lot of times that's confused with Board of Assessors. In a lot of towns, when they do first set it up, they're like, oh, assessing board, and they go, hey, yeah, that's our Board of Assessors. And half the time, the Board of Assessors might not even know that this is going on and that they're going to be in charge of it. And then they get thrown into their lap the next fiscal year. And hell, by the way, here we did this betterment. You're in charge of it. So you gotta be careful of, that's why the communication is so important, right, between us and the assessor's office and then also the finance director and town manager's office, that we work collaboratively and make sure that we're all on board and we take care of that together. So betterments and liens, certainly payoff figures can be done by the assessor's office or the treasurer collectors, however you decide. The assessors go ahead and sign off on that, and then you reconcile these payoffs. So there's not a lot to it other than it has to be administered. It has to be figured out, and we certainly want to work together to do those. Sorry, I have two screens going here. So let's talk a second about data transfers. We touched a little bit about this in the beginning, but the data transfer, that the biggest database in any municipality is kept in the assessor's office. That is a CAMA system, which is abbreviated for a computer-aided mass appraisal system. That's what CAMA means, all right? And what that is that we keep data on every single parcel in the town, from ownership records to information that we actually collected during an inspection, floor plans, exemption information, building permits, anything you can think of that would affect that property, we're certainly going to try and have it in our system, okay? So when we talk about that, one of the things that's becoming so popular is, for us in our office, is everybody wants a piece of that data now, whether it be E911 like we talked about. We get requests daily, if not weekly, about mailings. Oh, can I have a listing of all the large apartment complexes you have in your town? Because they want to send out a mailing. It is public record, but we're not required to create a special report to give them that information. But we do get requests a lot about the data, and it's the reason why we spend so much time updating that data and checking that data and verifying that it is correct. And it's one of the most expensive efforts that we have in our assessor's office, collecting that data. Is either we have to hire out somebody to go out and inspect those homes, or we have to hire a person in-house to go out and do those inspections each and every year. Clarifying the billing and due dates. I hope that your office and my office work together to come up with that due date and when those collections are going to be sent out, especially with motor vehicle commitment 1, our favorite commitment of the year, probably the biggest commitment we send out. So I know that my treasurer collector and myself, we meet, we say, yeah, what do you think? It's going to be this Wednesday, next Wednesday? Let's send it out on Valentine's Day, right? So we try to work together to come up with a scenario that works for both offices. because as you know, if you send it out, commitment one a little bit too early. Well, first of all, Vicki, when do you send out your commitment one? When can I expect my bill in sterling?
You can expect your bill probably the end of, when do we do it? End of February.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
That's great. I think that depending upon the town and the city that you work in, you know, that's something you want to definitely collaborate on. And going towards February is a good thing. I can tell you that our office is inundated in January, simply because they only have 1 month to file for an abatement or contest their appeal of their assessment. So we have a lot of traffic in the office, a lot of phone calls coming into our office in January. The deadline is February 1st. So just that first week of February, just kind of finalizing all the abatements, categorizing them, keeping an abatement book, starting to set up inspections, going out, looking at them, looking at all these appeals. And it's a lot of work for us. So we appreciate that if you send out commitment one, it's in February sometime, so we can have a little bit of room to compile those abatements requests and start looking into those and getting those done while we have commitment one come out, because then we're inundated with abatements. You know, I don't have that car anymore, you know, so that's going to begin for us in February. So hopefully you work together with that, with doing those, clarifying the billing and due dates, and then printing the commitments. Do you send out the bills to be printed, Vicki, or do you print them yourself and send them out?
We have our deputy collector prints our excise tax bills, and then we have a company, Globe Direct, that prints our real estate tax bills.
Yeah, that's what we use, Globe Direct. Yeah, we just signed up with them this year, in fact. Thank goodness, because I couldn't stand our last bill print company.
Yeah, I like this one. I've used a lot of different ones, and I like this company for the real estate.
Really good, really good. So when do you do your affidavit of mailing? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Those come from the companies that do the bill printing. So,
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So is it their signature on them, or
Yes.
do you have this? Okay. So they're basically submitting that they did it as an affidavit. It's very important because, like I told you before, that is something that we're required to submit as part of our jurisdiction documents when we go to the Appellate Tax Board for any appeal cases. So data transfers, we certainly want to make sure that all of our data is correct. So when we do transfer that file over to you guys, that everything comes over correctly and is right, and especially to try to lessen those returns, right? Those little yellow sticker envelopes. But this is very timely. Chris talked about it this morning. He's preparing for a budget. We're all preparing our budgets right now. It's also abatement and exemption season. Abatements end February 1st for most communities, depending on if you're quarterly or if you're semi-annual. That can change, but exemptions, all exemptions are due by April 1st at this point. That was changed, I think, in 2000 and when do we have our big snowstorm? Was it 2018 maybe? Where we had this controversy on when the due dates were, and they did the new municipal law and straightened out a lot of that language for us. So we're in the middle of processing exemptions right now, trying to get those in, dividing them up between the third and fourth quarters at this point. Certainly accepting all abatement applications, like we talked about. In every assessor's office is different, but one of the things that I've always done in any office I've worked on is I go out and inspect every abatement application that comes in. When we go out and collect data, we don't always get inside a house, but during the abatement process, we demand that we have to go through the whole home and make sure the data is correct. That's the first and foremost thing we do, and it's an opportunity for us to make sure we have our data correct. So I do require that. We're in any abatement application that's sent in. And then we're in the middle of processing those abatements and credits. And I know you guys are in the middle of collecting those property taxes right? And Vicky, can you talk a little bit, because I want this to be a little interactive, but can you tell me a little bit about how busy your office is with collecting payments right now? I mean, we're into the last week of January here, right? The due date's right around the corner for property taxes.
Right now,
So-
we're unbelievably, we're really not that busy right now. We do, since COVID, we've turned a lot of people on to using our Dropbox outside, and we have a lot more people using the online payment process. So actually, we're really not that busy with people walking in.
Yeah,
We've got the mail, we've got the, like I said, the payments in the Dropbox.
Yeah.
But
how about phone calls? You get a lot of phone calls still right now?
oh, yeah, people
Especially-
asking questions about their bill. Because now with the actual bills, the assessments are on there. So now they're calling and asking about that. Of course, then we have to tell them they need to talk to the assessor's office about that, so they can find out the specifics as to where that number came from. But we're, I mean, we're steady, but we're not overly busy right now. So, which is good.
Yeah, oh, that's good. There's a question in the Dropbox here, I mean, in the chat. When a property tax abatement is processed by the assessors, if the property tax is already paid, how quickly do you send a refund check? That's a great question. I would love to say 2 weeks, but I know that it's closer to 3 or 4 weeks, right? By the time it gets processed and
It's the
approved
timing
and
of it.
cut.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I know my finance director always tells me that, tell them 2 weeks, but every time I do, then I get the person coming back. Hey, it's been 2 weeks, where's my check? So
So
I
be
always
on
try to
be on the
tell
side
them-
of caution and say 3 to 4 weeks.
yeah, because it does take a little bit to process those. And so what happens with that, Vicky, from your end? So you receive an abatement from the assessor's office and you do just that. You look at the bill and it has been paid, so now a refund must be issued.
Correct.
What happens?
So then I have, in my office, I do have a woman who handles all the refunds. So she'll create a report and, first, especially for real estate, she will do a little quick look through to make sure payments, for all the abatements or all the refunds that are coming due, that they're correct. We've had some parcels where money's been applied to incorrectly, and we'd just like to make sure that the money that's being refunded is correct and needs to go back to the owner. So we do that. And then it goes up to our accountant, and then the checks get cut whenever that next bill payable goes out, and then the checks will get mailed.
Gotcha. So do you do this weekly, or do you like let the abatements kind of compile or refunds compile for a couple of weeks and then do that one report and send it all out at once, or?
Well, when we get a lot of abatements, we will do a refund report just to see what's out there, but usually it's once a month that we handle the refunds.
All right, so there you go. So those checks are going to be cut like in 4 weeks, right? Depending on when it's submitted. So that's why I was asking is, yeah, it can depend on your community. If it's very slow and you wait and you only have a few refunds a month, you wait till the end of the month and do it. Where a bigger community, when I was in Leominster, large community like that, a city that we used to do those almost weekly.
Wow.
So, yeah,
That's a
so
lot.
we would try and process those weekly, just because we had so much traffic,
We'll do them sometimes a little bit more often if we get a phone call from somebody, saying, oh, I just got an abatement and I know I've paid. I will push it through and get it to the people, a little bit quicker than usual, than the
Gotcha.
once a month.
And how many people are guilty of actually being relieved when they go, oh, I have a question about my assessment? You goes, oh, hold on, I got that number for you, and you transfer them to my office. Isn't that a nice relief, right? Don't lie to me and tell me you're not relieved by doing that.
We answer other questions for them.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you I'm as guilty. When they say, oh, I have a question about my taxes. Oh, hang on. I know that office and I transfer it to your office.
Right.
Right.
But we help each other out though.
That's right. That's called working together.
Exactly.
Yeah, someone here from Brewster says we usually try to process abatements and refunds every week in Brewster to keep databases current as possible. That's great. I think that's awesome. Good for you guys. That's great. All right, so let's look at our next thing here. So it's important to understand some things that the assessor's office do, so we're not just sitting in here with this big book of maps all year and just staring at maps, right? We have all these other mailings to get the information. I talked about the database that we have is the largest. The reason being is because of all the information we have to collect to value homes, but also to administer certain tax programs. So abatement applications, we talked plenty about those. Those are forms that we can send out if it's requested, or we have those available on our website so people can apply for those for either personal property, real estate, or motor vehicle. Income and expense requests. What those are is every commercial or industrial or large multifamily complex in your town or municipality is appraised according to what's called the income approach and the sales comparison approach. There's two approaches to value on any income producing property. And so we have to send out these income and expense request forms. They're called 38Ds. And the reason for that is because each year, the owner of that real estate will submit all of the income, all their rent roll that they receive from renting out parts of that building. And then they'll also list all the expenses required by them to maintain that building or keep it up to date. And so we simply put, in layman's terms, you take the total income of the property, you subtract all the expenses, and you're left with a net operating income that's divided into a capitalization rate, and that equals value. It sounds pretty simple, but it's not. I can tell you that. But that is the reason why we send those out. The other thing, we send those out all once a year. The other one is forms of list. Now, forms of list are not required to be sent out by the assessor's office. Actually, sometimes there can be a notice posted in your town hall that lists that the companies are responsible. But any town that I've worked in, I always send them out because you just get a better return, right? You have a better listing, you have a better rapport with those people. So I always send out forms of list each and every year. And basically that is for personal property taxes. Any business in town has to list all of their assets that the company owns. And they list them and give us information as far as when they were purchased, and then how long they've owned it, and then we can depreciate that and come up with a value for each piece of equipment they own. So forms of list are another thing that we send out. Chapter 61, 61A, and 61B, that's a forestry, agricultural, horticultural tax program in Massachusetts. We send out those each and every year due to our office by October 1st and for the following fiscal year. So those we're sending out ahead of time, and they do have to submit those to us. I'm sure that you guys are aware of that program. The taxes are drastically reduced, and it preserves open space and the farming culture in some of our small rural towns, and even in some of our cities where we have I know the town of North Andover, a lot of the western side is all state forest or open land, and the same thing with Leominster. Even though it's a city, there was a large portion of it. We still have a lot of 61 farmers in that west side of the city. So, and then exemptions. Honestly, exemptions are very tough. It seems like to remember the ins and outs of every exemption that we offer, it's hard to retain all of the criteria in each one of those exemptions. We'll talk a little bit about those, but the elderly, disabled veterans, the blind, the hardship exemption, get into deferrals, things like that. There are so many forms that we process, and I always love this time of year because this is when our Board of Assessors gets writer's cramp from signing all the forms, right? So we have them in, we do that. So there's a lot of forms that we send out each and every year to get that data we collect. Any questions on those? Let's just see, someone put something. What dates do the INE and form of list go out, and what are the due dates? That's great. That's a great question. So it depends, right? I typically try to send out the forms of list this time of year. In fact, we just sent all of ours out prior to the January 1 billing, simply because that any business is having their accountant do their taxes now. They're opening their books, they're doing all the paperwork, so why not send them the form to list their assets and send that back to us? It is due by March 1st, the forms of list. That's set in stone by the statute. However, the income and expense requests are due 60 days after the mailing of those requests. So income and expense requests, we send those out as well in January. Same reason. You know, the accountant's there, they're looking at all the income and expense data anyway. And it's just simple for businesses to say, hey, I got this from the assessor's office, can you fill this out too? And the accountant usually does that. So we typically send ours out in January. I found that pretty effective, and we've got a good rate of return. Also, with those INE expense requests, there is a statute now that allows the assessor's office, if voted by the town, to charge fees for not returning those. It's a $50 fee for residential and a $250 fee for any commercial properties. And that's classed properties. What that means is a apartment complex classed as a 112. It's still a residential use, even though they may have 350 units. We can only charge them $50 for not returning their income and expense form. Where you have a strip mall or a large commercial, you know, Home Depot or something like that, they can recharge up to $250 for not returning that income and expense request. But that has to be voted by the town, so you can assess those. That's a great question. Thank you, Monica, for that. And let's look at our favorite subject of the day, right? Motor vehicle excise. So we talked about that. This is very timely. We're about to send out motor vehicle excise tax commitment number 1. And I just received our file last week. Going to work with my treasurer collector to come up with a date. I think we are going to send those out on February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. And I think they'll come due on the 14th as well, March 14th. So we'll send those out, figure out the billing and due dates for that. Also look at any recommitments we may have from other towns. Do you process a lot of recommitments, Vicki? Do you get a lot?
No, we don't get that many at all. Maybe one or two a year. Yeah.
It's funny, we get a lot, and only because there's an Andover and a North Andover. So the registry of motor vehicles can't help themselves in coding it wrong every year. So we do have a lot of recommitments from Andover, and we have a lot that go to Andover. So it's kind of a joke between our two offices, like, here you go, here's your packet, here, we'll go down, here's your packet, right? So we end up processing a lot of commitments. Yes, she says the same thing for Reading and North Reading. Yeah, it's always right. It's just so funny. It's like, God, they can't just get it right. Entering the data. Sometimes with the recommitments are a pain in the neck, because we end up having to enter the whole bill. I don't know if it's just a Munis thing or how it is with every billing software, but we have to enter every piece of information: the address, the vehicle information, the vehicle identification number, which is so long. Don't want to get any fat thumbs when you type it in that. And so you have to enter all of that data: the plate information, the PAN, the passenger, the red plate, green plate, whatever it happens to be. You have to enter the whole thing. So it's really quite a process to do those, and it takes a long time. So we enter a lot of that data when it comes to recommitments. And then exempt persons. There are the VA plates out there. It's not automatic anymore. I mean, a lot of towns try to make it as automatic as they can for that veteran. If they have the VA plate, they kind of know which ones they are, and they try to pull those and tag those exempt before they send out the billing file to the deputy collector. You can do that. I'm not going to tell you it's wrong, but technically speaking, yeah, they're supposed to come in and apply for that each year, and the Board of Assessors should sign off on that. We certainly process an exemption for those. We try to make it easier on them by pulling that bill, filing for the abatement, having that person sign it, submitting it to the board, and allowing them to sign off on that so we can process that and everything's, legal and up to date. So we do that. And then, of course, the abatements, it never fails. Commitment one, they got rid of the vehicle, they sold it, and this is another topic of discussion because what's required by the office to process an abatement, and I think as a treasurer collector, one of the things that you can do is actually take a look at some of these abatement forms, this abatement application that we have everybody fill out. It's great for you guys to familiarize yourself with that so you have a little bit of knowledge of what's required to process an abatement. If they sold the car, we need the bill of sale, and then if they transferred the plate, we'll need a copy of the new registration to prove that they transferred the plate, or did they return the plate and get a new plate? Then we need a plate return receipt, and then the bill of sale. And then there's always, well, I didn't sell it, I junked the car. Well, who did you junk it to? Did they give you any paperwork? Okay, I need that. And it's a salvage yard that has to give them a bill of sale and say they received it, and it should have that VIN number on there. A lot of people get very upset with us requiring a lot of that information, but it happens. We have to do our due diligence. We have to collect all that paperwork, put in our files, keep that in case the auditor comes in and can just pull a couple samples and tell us if we're doing a good job, if we're following our due diligence. So, we're regulated by the state. That's the one thing I do like about the state is I get to blame everything on them. All right. So
Just used that the other day, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So talk about a little bit from your end, Vicki, what on the collector's end, when we're talking about excise commitment one, what's it like in your office?
It's a busy time, and of course, because there's so many bills and the value is not that much, the tax bill is not that much. We feel like we do a lot of work for such a little amount of money, but
Yeah.
it's necessary, and our commitments are kind of lessening a little bit. People aren't buying the new vehicles, because I can't even get the new vehicles. But,
Right.
But we're still holding on to, so close to the numbers that we've had in the last few years. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And how do you keep your commitment book? Do you print it out and actually keep it as a hard copy, or is it like?
Again, the deputy collector's office prints those for us.
Oh,
and they give us a nice little, nice little bind on it, binding plastic little circle thing there. I don't know what you call it.
Gotcha.
But
so you do keep a hard copy though?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. They even in Sterling in the past have sent out their real estate and personal property commitments to be bound in a nice little book. I haven't done that since I've been here, but I want to do that because I think that's a really nice thing to keep those.
And who's your deputy collector in Sterling?
Kelly and Ryan.
Kelly and Ryan, yeah. Very popular down there. I think when I was in Sturbridge, we had Jeffrey and Jeffrey. And now here in North Andover, I have PKS, right? Which is that Paul Kelly? That's the other Kelly, I think, from Kelly and Ryan. But
I don't know.
Yeah. So we have PKS up here in the Northern Shore. Jeffrey and Jeffrey is very typical out west, Western Mass. Central is we say Kelly and Ryan. Yeah. And now let me ask you this: when they do get the commitment, do they pull the exempts or flag the exempts for you?
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
Very important. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
We just started doing that. When I first got here, there was my assistant told me, "Oh yeah, we have all these." He hold up this little stack of, and he says, "Yeah, we got to abate all these." What do you mean we got to abate all these? What are you talking about? They used to send out the bills to their own town, each year, and then they would abate them. So kind of funny. Every town's a little bit different. Rentham says they use John Y. Brady out of Situate.
Holben
Okay.
and Holben from Plymouth.
Duxbury, Hobbin and Hobbin.
Don't even know.
Lindsay, now that I have you online, how do you get along with your assessor? This is Lindsay from Duxbury.
Oh, we get along great with our assessor.
Yeah, I know Steve Dunn real well.
He's a good guy. We like
Plenty
him a
of
lot
boys.
over here.
Funny guy, right? He keeps it funny, right?
Yes, he does.
The great guy. Steve used to be the president of the Mass Board of Real Estate Appraisers, actually. And he is running for executive board for the MWO as we speak now, too. I talked him into that. So yeah, he's a great guy. Tell him I said hello.
I will.
I'll see him next week anyway. We have a meeting as well, but yeah, he's a great guy. That's one great thing about being involved, like Vicky is, and like some of the rest of you are in your education of your association, is that networking. You know, it's very powerful. You know, you network with each other. You find out you can just talk about those difficult situations that every person comes up with, right? There's going to come across a situation, you know, land of low value, you know, tax title takings, the biggest pain in the neck things that we do, not all very often, but once a year or once every other year, depending upon what we do. It's always great to talk to one another and network and make sure that you're getting the right information and someone out there has the answer, right?
Right.
So I applaud you guys for being involved. That's really key.
It only took
and
me
then-
30 years to get involved, so I figured it was time.
You were dragging your feet, were you?
Yeah, I was.
That's it.
But
yeah.
it's been well worth it to get involved, to be part of the whole process.
Yeah, no, it really is, you know, opens your eyes quite a bit and then helps you also be in the forefront of your profession. You know, so through that networking, through being on the education committee and through being on the legislative committee or anything like that, you're forced to actually learn to be on top of that data and to talk with DLS, you know, BLA, all of those. So you know what you're talking about. And that's really, you know, you can't put a price on that. So definitely worthwhile. Anything else you guys want to talk about with motor vehicle excise commitments? Any other questions about anything we covered? I feel like we didn't talk a lot about the treasurer collector side of things. I think because you're all treasurer and collectors and this is an advanced class, I think you all do, you know, probably pretty familiar with what you do each day, but is there something that you have a question about the assessor's office that maybe I can help answering from my perspective from an assessor? Is there anybody has a difficult relationship with their assessor? I can go down and hunt them down and beat on them a little bit and slap them on the hand, because I always hate to hear that. Honestly, that's one of the worst things I can't stand. You know, we're out there's people like me and a lot of other assessors out there, like Steve, Lane from Concord, and Ellen from Medford. There's a lot of us that are very involved, and we try the best we can to make sure that we're being professional and that we establish that relationship with you guys simply by doing these things, getting together, doing these courses together. I go down to UMass every year. I've kind of pawned that off onto a couple other assessors at this point, but I used to go down and teach down there as well. So I like getting involved and I like doing that. But if anybody has an issue and if they want to talk about it offline, certainly happy to help with any difficulties you have or questions that you can't seem to ask your assessor. Feel more comfortable asking me, maybe I can provide that answer for you and help you out with that. If you have someone that's difficult or old school, so to speak, then maybe I can help you out. But basically, the biggest thing, takeaway from today is that communication. You know, we don't all have to be so rigid as far as rules and those things. And sometimes people aren't the best at asking for something, so I find it easier to, as my mother would say, yeah, lead bees to honey. It's a lot easier to lead with honey than it is mud, right? So simply feel like we were talking about earlier, if the assessors all can, even if they say, hey, give me a copy of the commitment, yeah, just give it to them. Just shut them up and give it to them, right? Because it's not worth it, right? And maybe they just have a personality that's not very congenial. So I think just trying to do that, open that door, is important, and I think you'll see some reciprocation eventually. And if you don't, just call me. Like I said, I'll go hunt them down, right? So
somebody did ask a question about how long do you typically wait for demands, to place demands?
That's a good question, Vicki. How long do you wait to demand?
We kind of just wait it out, and we're trying to give people a little bit more time, knowing times are tough for a lot of people, but we probably send out the demands probably 45 days after they were sent out. So yeah, we do the same here. We will go ahead and try to give them a little bit more lead time than we typically do, because of the COVID issue. Town hall was closed last year, so those types of things, we did give them a little extra time to pay, before we sent out demands. And of course, there are people that take advantage of that. Absolutely.
Right? Always something. But we did pretty close. I mean, this is the first time I've taught this via Zoom. I mean, the class interaction helps drag this on, but we're almost to, well, we're about almost 10:15, so that's pretty good. Is there any other questions that anybody has? Okay. All right. So with that being said, I do have one question for Vicki, though.
Yes.
Right now, I know that the assessor in Sterling is RRG, right?
Yes.
So is there someone that comes into that office? I mean, do you actually have an office, right? The assessor's office, and
We have an assessor's office, and the person that works for us comes in once a week on Mondays.
Oh, okay.
So, but
Okay.
he's available by email at any time. So I've not had any problems with working with them at
That's
all,
good.
because he's been really good about getting back to me if I have a question, especially if I'm doing the tax file, working with
Yeah.
our accounting, our collection software, excuse me. He's been there for me, so I haven't had any problems. So I'm very happy with them.
Oh, that's good. That's good
Yep.
to hear. And is there a clerk that's in there full time though?
Yes,
Yeah.
she works there full time. So she handles, helping people fill out abatement forms and answering questions about assessments and all that. So.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's good. I always wonder, it always helps me when I'm out there talking to other assessors too, how these things work in different towns. So. Okay. I guess, Beth, I'm going to hand it back to you if I can figure this out. See if we can figure this out here.